Welcome to OOO, an out of ordinary podcast where we dig deep into case studies and the nitty gritty of Web3 marketing. You'll find here all the amazing people that are building Web3, so stick to us as we address their marketing secrets and learn how to build amazing products and brands. Hello everyone, I'm Alex, your fellow Web3 marketer and the host on Out of Ordinary podcast. This is episode 35. Let me introduce you to my guest. Gosha Dolgun is the founder and creative director of The 37, a marketing firm built to elevate brands, communication, and advertising. Gosha has 5+ years of experience in Web3 and has worked with over 50 top projects. Here's a fun fact about him. Gosha has worked with the Google Creative Lab, Anchor, Polkadex, and other interesting projects. One of them being a KFC commercial his team was asked to produce. The project had a last-minute actor substitution, and the client asked Gosha to be part of the commercial. Well, a fun acting debut, if you ask me. Hi, Gosha. How are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm so excited about this conversation. So kind of to kick it off, would you like to tell me and our audience a bit about yourself and how you got into Web3?
Yeah, for sure. So again, my name is Gosha. I'm the founder and creative director of a marketing company called The 37, which specializes on IT, tech startups, and then we have a big focus on Web3 as well. I've been in crypto and Web3 space for, I'd probably say 7 to 8 years now in terms of like general crypto knowledge, investments, and then the sphere we would call Web3. Although I've been an enthusiast for that time, I've probably been in Web3 marketing myself for probably 4 or 5 years, maybe 4. And I got into Web3 marketing super accidentally, but I think like most people, it was off the back of bull runs and a hype for NFT projects. And just this one time, this client, this connection we had came to us with an idea for an NFT project for the Cannes Film Festival. And basically, the NFT project went very well. It sold out in not to get into too many details of it, but just very quickly. And the hype, the media PR was very big off of it. And obviously, the money at the time that was coming into the market was very different. And it sort of sparked in my mind, hey, maybe I shouldn't just be an enthusiast and let's say a part-time investor in this space. Maybe there is room to grow and maybe there's room to help more companies and more projects. And that, as I said, sparked the interest. And then from there on, the bull run kept happening. Clients were coming left and right and sort of went from there. Created a Web3 department at the old agency I was at, ended up landing partner at that firm. And then after a while, went my own way with earlier this year, late last year, started my own agency and have been working with quite a lot of Web3 clients and Web3 partners since that time as well.
This is nice because I think like everybody in Web3 has like such a different story. So I really like it when people kind of make this switch naturally instead of like just going for the money in Web3, especially right now in the bear market. So what kind of services does your agency provide, and why did you decide on these services specifically?
Yeah, it's a really tough question. I feel like some days even my team asks me, what is our final list of services? But some say it's like a full cycle marketing or full service or end to end. But I would probably say we are more focused on some say bottom or the top of the project, but I would say it's like the creative strategy and the campaign strategy behind a project. That's where we start with most of our clients. At first we started with just content production, just video production, but then we realized quite a lot of the projects ended, let's say, not in the best fashion that we wanted to, just because we left a lot of it to luck or for the perception of, let's say, taste or client taste or opinion, meaning we didn't get to control as much of the project as we wanted to. And then we really started consulting and diving in and educating as a team ourselves on creative strategy, campaign strategy, brand vision, how other brands are doing it, how historically the best brands built visions and strategies. And then we started applying it with clients, and it yielded better results in projects, even where we had just a slight sliver of control outside of the strategy. So it might be something like strategy plus video or strategy plus community building. And that yielded, again, great results. On top of that, we're very experienced in video production of all sorts, whether it's like an animated video or live action production, whatever it might be. And then our secondary focuses are web design and brand design. And again, they cross over super well with each other. And that's sort of how we built our service stack.
Actually, I'm happy that you mentioned the video side of things, because that's something that's been on my mind for quite a long time. Mostly because, like, at the last event that I've been to, I felt like the industry is not really ready for video production. Maybe because it's the bear market. I don't know. Maybe in the bull market things are a bit different. So before we kind of dive deeper into the conversation, I want to ask you a very burning question. Is video does video content still work in Web3?
Yeah, I think the safe answer for that would for me to just say absolutely it works, but I'd probably be lying if I was 100% sure that it is the best option right now, or that it works. I think lots of companies are struggling with budgets for video, and they're mainly struggling for these budgets for video production because the quality, the minimal standard for video has grown quite a lot over these past years, whether it be because of new tech or just talents growing. It's quite a lot harder, and because of that, again, the yield and the barrier to entry is much, much higher. But I think with the right creative direction and with the right sense of what your community needs and wants and the potential customer, I still think video is the best, if not one of the best options. Again, it just depends on a lot of factors for the company and what they're trying to achieve, as well as the resources they have in place. Now, talking about budgets, it's not like you have to have $1 million budget for every video. Sometimes having the right talents on your team that can help video, again, get the best results possible can help sort of reduce that barrier with the budgets. But even then, speaking about talents, it's very hard to find them. And it's not always... It can sometimes be the harder, let's say, barrier at that point, or the harder obstacle than just the budget. So hopefully that was a clear enough answer. But yeah, it works, just not always.
But I think it's also a matter of like strategy, right? Like what do you want to do with that? Because I feel like many times people were not really using it because they had no idea how to use it properly, or they would just invest a lot of money in it, but then like they would not do the distribution properly, and therefore they would have basically wasted a lot of money and time and
Yeah,
resources.
100%. That's a great point. I think like a lot of projects go into talking about videos like we need a video, and then they don't really have a thought afterwards. Well, what comes next or what's after that? And yeah, spot on. I think video without promotion strategy or without further execution and activation it's a visual that might be cool. It might win an award, but other than that, it won't have much use. 100%.
Yeah, fair. So kind of moving forward, we both know that Web3 is a place with a lot of noise. Why should companies still look at it as the next thing and plan to get into Web3 or cater to Web3 audiences? And I think like the question comes from like a Web2 to Web3 perspective, because I think that's something that a lot of people have been looking at recently, at least like in the conversations that I've been having quite a lot. Maybe in a bull market again, like things are a bit different because like, everybody's building and everybody's like just throwing money left and right. But I think we are still in a place where we can try to evaluate these decisions and kind of figure out like what would be the next step, and if Web3 would be a good option for some of these companies.
Yeah, I would probably start with just mentioning that To be quite honest, I think most successful Web2 companies need to focus on a few different contributing factors before they get into what makes them a Web3 a company built for Web3 audiences, or a Web3 company. Things like transparency. So obviously, talking about their product, about the product they're marketing, about the way they speak to the community, and then eventually their community. So making sure that their community is not just a money grab or like a monetization option, but rather there is deeper connection in that. I think then they can start competing with projects that were initially built on that transparency and the sense of community, and then again they can move slowly into Web3. Unfortunately, I feel like the trend with what the market was, quite a lot of corporations, not to name names, but some of the bigger ones, they tend to think that an NFT project or like a Web3 branch in their company will be sort of the answer to get into the Web3 space. But I think we've seen historically that the native Web3 audiences and the enthusiasts have sort of like bit right through that and understood that it was almost like always some sort of scheme and not much depth to it. There are some companies, again, not to be super specific, but in the Baltics, that have started with NFTs and Web3 communities quite a few years back, and they still continue to do it and still continue to back up the product and continue to service their clients that contributed to that, and still build up their community very actively because of the belief in Web3. But that all started because they were very transparent, and they've shown the mistakes they've made, and they've shown where they're stronger and weaker. And without that, I don't think they would have much success. So a bit of a tough answer, because I think I don't think there needs to be an inherent push for Web2 companies to go Web3 until they can become more transparent and become a little bit more community centric. But again, that's like, I feel like that's an answer where it also requires a lot of depth. Just saying you're community centric, listening to the community on a few activations or having a Discord channel is not just a one-stop shop. Like, we are Web3 now. I think it goes deeper than that. But before you even start that conversation, you need to, I think, cross over a few items off that checklist.
For me, I think it's also a matter of like building it right from the beginning, right? Especially like, okay, if you're like a bank or like a very big, or Sephora, for example, which you already have like a big database and you're kind of like doing a lot of activations and stuff. There's not much transparency, let's say, to it, because you already have the community and you're already like keeping them engaged, let's say, or sometimes they use your product or your company for like very different reasons because they actually need it, or like there's no other better option. But at the same time, especially when it comes to like smaller companies that would like to get into Web3 or like use blockchain or like use NFTs and so on, I think it's a matter of like building it right from the beginning. And I think this is one of the things that I personally like about Web3, that it kind of pushes you to do things right. Even if, like, obviously I've seen companies in Web3 that they have not done it right from the beginning.
It almost feels like some of the industry leaders in the Web2 space, or that are regarded as Web2 companies, sort of sat down in the boardroom and said, hey, how can we, extract a little bit more from this audience or this trend that's going on? And I think that's very unfortunate, because I think they lost the underlying opportunity, which is to be a leader in a space that is growing so rapidly. And it just feels like it creates a lot of untrust, both for them and then for the general industry, which is unfortunate, because you're sort of in a negative way killing two birds with one stone just for a money grab. But again, sometimes that's what just has to happen for the industry to grow and for people to realize what's real and what's not. And maybe it's just a growing phase for all of us and for these companies as well.
For sure. I think like many times, like a lot of companies did not want to lose the train, let's say. and they wanted to just jump on it and kind of experiment, especially those with a lot of money. So, but as you said, like I think it's unfortunate sometimes like how things roll, but at the same time, I think it's something that needs to happen for the industry to grow. So I'm totally there with you as well.
Really.
Kind of talking about like Web 2 to Web 3, what are some Web 2 tactics that still work in Web 3?
Yeah, I would say one that I use with my clients and partners quite often is, and again, I don't think there's not one dictionary in terms of what is in finality Web2 and Web3, but I think because Web3 is so focused on privacy and security, it has stopped focusing on personal brand. And you're actually, I think, a great example of personal brand and personality and persona coming in as a very strong factor for marketing and for gaining an audience and for building communities and so forth. So I would say quite a lot of Web3 projects that we've worked with have sort of came to us and said, hey, we have the community, we have the product, and we want to focus on the community, but they don't really build those personas and they don't market through personal brands. One example to use is, for example, they could be very active on something like Discord within their niche community, but they won't market themselves to, let's say, an external community somewhere on LinkedIn. For example, where there could be more to gain, more audience to bring in, more people to educate, and so forth. So again, it's tough to qualify if it's strictly a Web 2 sort of thing, but I think personal brand marketing is one tool that a few more Web3 projects should use in order to gain trust and obviously build a bigger audience. Yeah, but I think you're a great expert in this. So I wanted to ask you, would you qualify Web2 personal brand marketing as a Web2 tool, or is it sort of flexible to both sides?
I think it's flexible to both sides, but at the same time, I think one of the biggest issues that I've noticed, and I think I've been mentioning this in like many episodes that I've had, um, especially recently, is that I think many times people they want like in Web3 they want to be anonymous or like build anonymously, but at the same time I feel like I'm seeing a lot bigger trend into like um, people showing or like companies showing who's actually behind the scenes. I think it was something at the beginning of times, let's say, but I'm kind of seeing a shift towards that. And something that I've discussed with somebody on one of my episodes, and for me, it kind of stayed as like one of the most important or my most important takeaways is that many times people want to build this like anonymous teams, but at the same time, communities want to see the person behind that. So dogs or not dogs, that's like it's up to everybody. But at the same time, I think to build to kind of go on that transparency route, let's say, and building it right from the beginning. I personally I prefer to show my face to tell you exactly who I am, what I think, what I'm up to own my mistakes, to own my successes, because I think I've seen founders that have done that and they've built a brand and they've built a community around their company or their project with their brand, and they said it like when they fucked it up or when they were successful at what they managed to do. And I think this is what drew the growth of the project and where they are right now. So if you were to ask me, I think it's a Web2 tactic, which is not enough embraced into Web3 to become Web3 native, if you want to call it
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
It is.
yeah. Yeah, I think we have this one amazing partner, this one client, and if they listen to this, they'll know for sure I'm talking about them. But we were working on their community building strategy and how to communicate to their audience. And we exactly like, as you said, we recommended launching like a docu-series of everything going on behind the scenes at the offices. And it's such a special product and such a special team on their end that it was like, for us, it seemed like a no-brainer. And at the time and still now, they're sort of hesitant on it. But I think one day for sure the trend will pick up to where people want to see faces, people want to see personalities and names and emotions, and it's very hard to conquer that, and it's very hard to remove that. And although I appreciate Web3's safety, privacy, and anonymity, let's say, factors, I would say there is still something to lose in terms of Web3 marketing if you aren't considering transparency behind your team.
Personally, I've seen this. I think one of the things that people don't speak so much about in Web3, maybe because of this time that we're passing through right now, is branding and employer branding. And I think showing faces and showing emotions and so on makes people want to work for you. And this is like a great way to attract talent, which I feel like not many people think properly about. But it's still like, when people say that Web3 is the wild, wild west, it is true, because sometimes, like, looking at JDs for marketing managers, you just want to like have like a very, very good laugh. It's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy. And I've actually posted one on Twitter the other day, because there were stuff like self-control, willingness to work in a team instead of by yourself, attention to detail, and basically like, do you also want my soul? Like, what else do you want from me? Like,
yeah,
they had
yeah.
like a huge list of like stuff that they were requiring. And I think for me, this like huge red flag, meaning that you will never have like a good life in the company culture. Like, it's really fucked up. But then you look at the funding and you still like, they just received like, I don't know, 20 million in investment. And I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great point, and I just think it's going back to the idea of people can hide behind screens, and then it's very unfortunate, but they themselves lose touch of what they would say face to face to a person, and then what they text in a Discord chat or on Twitter and wherever else. And so, like, when you lose that recognition of what's really you, then your company starts saying things that it really doesn't make sense to say. Then the culture starts becoming like tweets to each other rather than real connection and calls and meetings and face-to-face meetings as well. So I just feel like it's an unfortunate reality of maybe not just Web3, but really like the remote world we're getting into. I think that has to play a factor in it as well. But I think we're seeing some companies turn it around. And if to mention some of the top clients we work with, they have very strong, but most importantly, honest cultures. They know who they are, what they are, and they don't, as you said, they don't put those motivational quote phrases in the job descriptions. They're just very focused on what their task is and what their goal is. And and they build around that and do so transparently.
Is there anything else that you wanna add to this, or is there any other tactic that you've seen in like Web2 that you think it's still good to use in Web3 as well?
I think for the video, not just video, but I think for creators, as a creative director, I think it's important to mention to take quite a lot of inspiration, not just from your peers in the Web3 industry, but from the giants and from the very talented people in the Web2 industry. I still think the Nikes, the Apples of the world are the greatest in terms of advertising and content creation around their company. So I would, just because they're a different business model or a different industry focus, I wouldn't forget them as sort of an inspiration case and also reference case for how to build your content and video and any visuals as well. I think that's an important one to mention, just because we see quite a lot of people and clients coming to us and sending us an example of work done for their competitor or for a very similar company. And then you zoom out and say, hey, how about we do something that's in the in a Web2 company, and then they say something like, oh, that's old, that's not innovative, that's nothing new. And it just feels like they're saying that because it's not a Web3 company, and they feel like they're in this pool of, we need to be like all other Web3 companies, which I think creates that repetition. So yeah, that would probably be my answer there.
What is, in your opinion, the biggest difference when doing marketing for Web2 to and Web3?
I think amazing question in terms of like the nuances you can get into, and I think it's a conversation that can go on for 10 hours. But if I was to think of like one most important thing, is the talent. I think the talent and the people in Web3 right now are focused in majority, right? I think there's very few people focused on Web3 marketing because there is much less incentive, what feels like much less incentive, because in the industry, if you're looking at these projects, you can get much more return being a trader, a builder, a, let's say, tech focused persona. And I think that's why marketing gets a little bit less praise. I think in top projects, obviously the like Web3 marketers are very well incentivized, but I think across the board there's just way less positions and way less control, and therefore like less demand and less talent. And I think the flow of talent has definitely stopped. People saw it for as a trend that some think has died down, and therefore they've went back to what's safe and what's trusted. And yeah, I just think the competition in Web3 marketing is very small for talent, but at the same time, you're getting, it's a lot of junior people, a lot of great people, but not much middle ground, and a very small middle ground. And I think that's unfortunate. It creates unhappy clients, unhappy projects, unhappy companies, because they don't know who to trust, and they don't know who's an opinion leader. They don't know who's tried and tested. And I think that could be a problem if we're comparing specifically marketing people in Web 2 and Web 3.
Fair enough. I've kind of felt the same for a very long time, and I have a friend who recently told me that she's gonna switch her podcast from like Web3 to Web2 because apparently Web3 is getting like a really bad reputation, and she wants to like just focus on the tech side of things. I was like, why? You've invested so much time and effort into this, and like if you really believe her, like you're gonna go on with it, like. Going back to like what's safe, it may be a good option for some people. I don't know if it's the best option, but it is an option, and people just, if they choose that, need to respect it, I guess.
I think there's an argument of like, how emotional are you? Was there ever an emotional connection to this idea of Web3 and what stands behind it? Or was it hey, I was part of this and therefore I feel like I needed to be like a representation of it, or it needed to be part of my brand? And I think that just created a lot of dissonance for people about what it really is. And at the end of the day, it's still like both Web2 and Web3 are just terms. It's just definitions that somebody sat down and sort of decided to separate. I wouldn't judge anyone that decides to go either way. I just think you can be both Web 2, Web 3, and be strong in each thing, and be special in each niche as well.
Fair enough. I just wanted to say I'm not judging. I'm just like looking from outside. And I'm like,
it's. I guess it's like it's what's best for the person, and if interest picks up again in what we call Web3, then maybe they'll make a return, and it'll be best of both worlds.
I'm actually looking forward to see the bull market coming and see exactly like if there will be an influx of marketers moving back to Web3. So I think that'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the day. Throughout time, we've worked on what people call these like video explainers, these like very standard 90-second videos about the company, and we've probably worked on like 100 of them. And we did one bull run where we did several dozens of these videos. The market sort of calmed down, and then I was like, great, maybe now the quality of video and inspiration will pick up for the next bull run. And then like clients are calling me, hey, we need video explainers and stuff like that. And it was wild. So I don't know if it'll be a positive trend. Obviously more talent better, but the consequences in terms of final output might be a little dire, but we'll see. There's obviously hope in the next bull run, and for marketers, I definitely think it's a needed almost like break in terms of many different factors.
For sure. So one of the things I love about Web3 is that there's so much. It's such an experimental place to be in. How do you test what works and what doesn't, and at what point do you cut your losses and you decide that it's time to move on?
Yeah, this is more of I think a general practice rather than specific to Web3. Although in Web3 you have much less room for I think for risk, just because you can be quite new in regards to positioning your product, just because there's not much history behind certain ideas. So what does it mean in terms of our planning? From how I plan and how our company plans, we're very detail and script oriented. So like we'll script every single situation possible, and almost treat it like a football or like a sports match. You script the right and the wrong. You script the win and the loss, and it's as simple as if our campaign goes and converts at a certain rate, a certain threshold, this is our next step. After that step, if it goes right or wrong, this is the next step. And so, like we try to plan these things out way in advance. And especially for the losses. And like to everyone listening, I would really recommend to treat marketing campaigns, especially in Web3, as like you can lose a game or two, you can have a bad, let's say, campaign or bad activation, but if you've planned around losing, you will be back. And it's like you can't just say one day that we're going to stop marketing forever. We're not going to market at all. We'll go to different pathways. We'll build through the network or through referrals or whatever. But I think that's just silly. And then you'll always come back to the table, and you're back in the game. You're back in that season. And the second part of it, I think, is that's very important. And I've spoken like so much about this with everyone in my network, is experiment with your community. Like give them the baton of what they want to see, what your community wants to talk about. And sometimes audiences could just be like your investors. It could be like 10 customers, or it could be like some companies, some projects, 10,000. Go into the Discords, go on Twitter or X now, and ask, what do you guys want us to talk about? How do you guys want us to position the community, the product, and so forth? And I think, again, that community-centric approach is the best way to yield the best results from experimentation, because people will see that you're trying to connect with them. And even if it's not the right option, your losses are very minimal, because again, you're building on that transparency, and you're even building your brand within the process. It's the same thing I think that we talked about like opening sort of the books, opening the windows and curtains and showing like what's really happening on the inside. And it's a very like a win-win situation, I would say.
Let's talk about budgets as well, because I think this is one of the most important things, and that like I feel like not everybody talks about it, and people kind of shy away from it. What are some trends you've noticed in terms of like marketing decisions made by founders, and how do they spend the money, especially on marketing, marketing externally, let's say, not like within if they have like an internal team?
Yeah. I think founders are becoming more and more efficient, more ruthless and decisive, which is a very good thing.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Or I should say, at least the founders that we work with. Because if you're getting like another monkey profile picture NFT project, maybe there's different things going on there. But no, I think our partner network and our client network is very much more efficient, which is a very good thing for strong marketing companies, and a very, very bad thing for those that are a little bit weaker, that are a little bit more surface level. I think all around there's more like project, like deliverables to work on in the space, but with less overall budgets in each project. I think true investment is harder to come by. You said that like some of these projects can be completely anonymous, but still raise large investments. I still think that investment, not just the amount of them, but the total quantity across the space has lowered quite a bit. So again, therefore, less marketing projects to come by. And I think the other trend is company executives, whether again it's founders or anyone else leading the marketing in a project, they're pushing to get most return from each project. And I'm sure, as most understand, pushing returns from every single campaign isn't always the right or the rational decision. And I don't know, like an example could be having a very simple video explainer and expecting that I'm going to post this and I'm going to get my audience to grow by thousands of people. And then you just connect the dots and understand, well, an explainer video won't get you that. You need to have incentive for the community. You need to maybe have an ambassador program. You need to maybe have a series of promotional videos, and only then this audience will convert. And unfortunately, right now, some executives are picking the right options, but a little bit less patient in those decisions. And nowadays, I tend to discuss budgets with clients as like a long game right away. It's even if it's just, let's say, a video project that they want us to do or a certain visual, then we still say, look, you cannot treat this visual as something that will be used for a month or two and then like never have any use again. And the project might be delivered in a week or a few months, but it needs to be able to last years as a result of it, not just a few months. In terms of like numbers, I think like companies that used to talk about, just to understand how far I think it's scaled down, companies that would end the year and start planning budgets for next year and be talking about we're going to spend with an agency specifically, we're going to spend $1 million with you or 500,000 with you, have probably scaled that down by at least half in some situations. Those that remain very efficient stay on those budgets, but the spreadsheets of how those things are budgeted are very detailed, from a banner to a influencer that they want to spend on. Everything has just become way more microscopic, which is a good thing, but it means us as a team, as a marketing team, we have to be very ruthless ourselves in attention to detail.
But I have a very important question here. So do you think it's because they've kind of understood the value or like how they should plan things out or like what they should be investing in? Or do you think it's just a matter of like bull market, bear market, and they want to like tone it down a bit, just like keep it the bare minimum until like everybody starts investing again, and then they would maybe have like a chance of like growing at a more rapid pace once the bull run comes?
I think they've just seen a lot of their peers and competitors, even with very strong products and visions, just get absolutely slaughtered in the market, and companies going bankrupt, companies dying, and seeing, I think the strong entrepreneurs, the strong leaders see that and understand what are the mistakes those companies made and how do we avoid making the same mistakes. I think that's one part of it for, again, the very smart and efficient leaders. On the other hand, there are new projects coming into the space, and it's definitely a matter of bull and bear market. And I would say one warning sign is usually when a marketing goal is more, how can we raise, it's based on investment in the short term and sales in the short term, rather than bringing utility to the market. Those companies that talk about how we show our utility or how we brand our utility or again, show our product will have, I think, the most audience, the most investments, and therefore the most sales, while some companies think first, like, how do we generate the sale? And those pathways are very different, in my opinion.
I feel like you've kind of met like all the smart people in Web3, because my experience is totally different. Like in my experience, like people, every time I met a founder, they wanted to build a community right away. They wanted to sell right away. And like no matter how much like you would explain to them that this is not exactly how it works, especially because like in Web3, you do a lot more community building and trying to build transparency and sustainability and so on. And in Web 2, maybe you just like start with some Facebook ads. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have kind of relied on that for like user acquisition. But I feel like for a very long time, that's kind of how I felt things were. I'm not exactly sure, because right now I feel like I also work with people that understand things in a totally different way. But I think like there's still a lot of companies out there that just crazy about this community building and like building something really big and monetizing right away, which is obviously almost impossible. If
Yeah, I think that happened naturally too. I wouldn't say we didn't have we have all the top clients to work with. I just think we've realized that even from an economical standpoint, as a marketing company, you can sell a video or two at a fairly profitable rate, but then you've put in quite a lot of time into building this relationship that won't yield too much. And so we've been quite brutal, I would say, from a sense of like, who do we want to work with? How do we qualify our client as well? And we don't test the client, but we get into conversation very early on to talk about what is the future of our working relationship and what is the future of our collaboration. How do we build this that makes sense emotionally, logically, financially, and so forth? And that took some time. I mean, there was countless, again, I don't want to bash on NFT projects, but countless profile picture NFT projects that put us through the ringer of like, oh, it's a sale, it's a project, but then you look back at it and you're like, this was probably a waste of time that didn't contribute much to the growth of our business. So yeah, I think we sort of grew out of it, and still you don't always get sort of the good apples every time. Sometimes you'll have one where it's not the greatest collaboration, but we've also found a way to like move on in better ways, meaning we still retain that relationship and we just say like, look, we just didn't mix and match, and it's fine. I think at the end of the day, it's a learning phase for everyone.
I mean, like that's a moment when you cut your losses, right?
Yeah.
What are some issues companies come to you with? Like, what do they want, like in terms of marketing? What are the needs that they have?
Yeah, even just quoting what do they want, I go into many different discovery meetings and calls with clients, and that's the question you want to ask back to the client, like, what do you want? Do you know what you specifically want? I'd say most times this is a bit more on like the surface level, but the clients themselves have no idea what exactly they want. And that first thing that they take from us, even before we lock anything, is like clarity. And we define between the wants and the needs. And once you define between what the wants and the needs are, the issues and the obstacles more so can be so like have such a big variety. But then that also creates quite a lot of different solutions for these obstacles. And a certain problem or a certain goal could have 10 different solutions. And again, it's going back to that conversation of like, you test everything, what wins, what loses, and then you sort of scale the winners. The most popular in terms of like quantity of requests and new interests is definitely like promotional campaigns to drive sales or investment. I mean, it's just the obvious one. I think either companies want more market share, more sales in where they are now, or to get them from like 0 to 1. So I would say the biggest product/service sold is definitely like creating content and strategy for promotional and sale campaigns, which is great too, because then you sort of dig deep and see like, look, maybe we need to go back and build up the brand a little bit more, or even build up the image of the product a little bit more before you can even start selling anything.
Fair enough. I kind of feel the same, but I think it's good to see a reinforcement from your side as well. How do you think we can make Web3 safer and twist this mentality that like Web3 is just scam and because like we've talked about people going back to like Web2 because it's a lot safer, it's much more predictable than Web3. And what do you think we should do to make Web3 like a safer space for everyone?
Yeah, I think another question with many different layers. I think from a like genuine security / privacy issue. People need, like, Web3 has to be education first. We see so many educational courses, ebooks, podcasts around general marketing, general industries, financial industries, and so forth. And like that is like at some point even taught at schools, right, in universities. While as Web3 education is like quality is very hard to come by. Like someone here and there will make a safety course about, or a video about how to use crypto, how to make sure, you're not exposing your data or info and so forth. But it's very, very, very surface level. That I would say from like a general standpoint. Going into the conversation of like, how do people, let's say the mainstream, look into this niche community of native Web3 enthusiasts? I would probably say, let's cut a little bit from the conversation the separation of Web 2 and Web 3. Again, these are just terms. I think for branding purposes and for specifics, it's good to separate Web 2 and Web 3. But just in conversation, I probably never use it. I don't know about you, but I never go and actively talk to a person that isn't in the industry that, like, what differences between Web 2 and Web 3, because then they get confused. They feel a difference. They feel like either someone's higher or lower, like there's something better or worse. Almost by accident, when people hear Web 3, they feel like it's a better web than Web 2. And that creates a little bit of like a defensive mechanism. So that's another thing. And then the third thing is like going again, reiterating talent. The more bright personalities we get, the more opinion leaders we get that can really convey what they think and what's educational, what's the right option, then we'll get quite a lot more inflow of their audiences and people to follow them. And then the whole industry will grow as a result. But even then, you need depth and quality. You can't just be like a interesting personality with millions of followers and just say like, let's all go Web3, let's all go crypto, because we've seen what that yields, right? Quite a lot of like rug projects and quite a lot of scams as a result, and a lot of trust lost. So it will be a cycle before we get to somewhere stable and consistent. But I would say those are like my three go-to options for that.
Well, I'll ask you another Web3 question right now. What are some Web3 tools that you'd like to know or anybody to use, or like some resources that you think are very useful, newsletters, whatever you want?
Yeah, I think I will answer another Web3 question with another half Web2, Web3 answer. I would say resources-wise, and I can't preach enough that people do their own self-discovery. I would start here if they're listening to this, then continuing listening to more episodes, and even like you look at the speakers, you look at the names, go search, go see what they're tweeting about, go see what they're talking about. So there's already some self-exploration to happen through this podcast. In terms of like generalizing tools to use or platforms to use, I would break it down into three main things for Web3 marketers to get deeper into the space. I would say to understand surface level community and culture, Twitter / now X is very, very good for seeing the entire picture of the very formal and serious communication in Web3 from specific companies, projects, and personas to just the cesspool of memes and culture inside jokes that go on in the space. In terms of technical knowledge, it is studying specific crypto products / projects, blockchain, white papers, light papers, tech papers, and so forth. Just reading 3, 4, 5 of the white papers or tech papers of the top projects as a Web3 marketer, you'll go a very long way in understanding what people are reading and how much depth they need in terms of materials. Again, there's a very important trend to talk about that most of Web3 natives now are very tech friendly and very tech depthy. I don't know if that's even a word, but hopefully that makes sense. While as somewhere else, you can just get away with surface level terms. And then the last one would probably be Discord but not just Discord as a tool, but Discord communities as go into them and again, see how people are communicating and how they're sort of carrying themselves in their persona profiles, as well as how projects are building communities. The community, some Discord communities can be quite shocking in terms of the depth of conversation they can build across thousands of people. And we have some partners and clients that are just fabulous and fantastic in terms of daily communication with their community across, let's say, like 20,000 people. And you look into this and you're like, wow, that's inspiring, because there's companies that have millions and maybe even billions in their audience that will not do anything remotely close in terms of connecting with their audience, which is insane. And I think there's opportunity lost in that. But hey, like maybe they'll come around to it and they'll learn from the Web3 communities, and there will be some takeaways.
Yeah, I've also noticed, like, I actually know a really big company that has like a very, very big community, like I think like 50,000 people, and they don't do anything with it.
Yeah,
so that's pretty unfortunate.
It's a shame.
So before we wrap this up, where can people find you?
People can find me just using my name. Most times on platforms, I just spell it together, Gosha Dolgun. On Twitter and Instagram. I'm relaunching my Twitter as part of the promotion for this podcast. But and on LinkedIn, again, Gosha Dolgun, you'll probably see the post there as well. Those are my three main platforms. And then if you ever want to work or talk with our company, it is the37.com. And the 7 is the number, and the 30 is spelled out in a word. We'll
leave the links in the description of this episode anyway, so that anybody that wants to get in touch to be able to do that. Thank you so much for being with me today. It's been an awesome conversation, and I'm looking forward to have another one once the bull market starts to kind of see how things have shifted.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much. And appreciate everyone listening, and appreciate obviously you for the amazing hosting job, and being a pleasure to conversate with. Thank you.
Thank you, Gosha. See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to our Out of Ordinary podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to hear more content like this, then open up the podcast app and click on the follow or subscribe button. It takes less than 5 seconds and is the single best thing you can do to support the show and stay up to date to more marketing strategies that are being used in the Web3 space.